Hello everybody, good morning. Welcome to our session Teaching Technologies. My name is Monica, I'm the chair. And nice to meet you virtually, Margherita. Hello to Italy.
Hello, hi everybody.
Hello, today we have 3 speakers. Each session is 30 minutes long, as you know, for the presentation. And I would like to introduce Margherita Pelleriti, who is going to speak about the experience with a class of adult learners attending a CLIL course at the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia in Italy. Margherita works at the Language Center. Her main activities include language advising and language testing, and she's also a co-author of 2 English course books. So, Margherita, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Monica. Let me please share the screen. Okay, hope you can see it. Yes, I think I can start. So, good morning, everybody. Greetings from sunny Modena, Italy. First of all, let's introduce the CLIL class as an introduction. It was a class of secondary school teachers who were offered the opportunity to attend a B2 C1 English language course, which was free, thanks to an agreement between the regional education authorities and my own university, which is the University of Modena Reggio Emilia, in particular the Department of Studies on Language and Culture. The course was offered during the last academic year, and it was devoted to in-service secondary school teachers, both long-term and short-term. They taught subjects other than English and were asked a prerequisite, which was a B2 level, thanks to international certifications or other certificates, such as certificates of attendance. The course lasted about 5 months, and they were asked to attend it for 60 hours maximum. The minimum was 45 hours, and they were also asked to attend autonomous learning for 70 hours. In terms of gender distribution, we can see that the majority were women and just 25% were men. More in detail, I had a total of 20 students, 15 were women, 5 were men. The majority was based in Modena and just 6 students in Bologna. They taught several subjects ranging from humanities, such as Italian, Latin history, to sciences, such as chemistry, physics, electronics, and so on. I decided to administer an entry test, which was a criterion reference test, and it was about general English, so English as a second language, at the B2 level. The test was composed of 3 parts: reading and use of English, writing, and listening. Here, I will focus on listening only. Concerning the format, there were 2 tasks with monologues, dialogues, and multiple choice questions as test method. 3 options, and the aim was assessing listening for detail, but also listening for gist. In terms of CAT score, the minimum was 60%, which for this test meant 9 points out of 15. The students were allowed 2 audiophile plays as maximum, and in terms of total time, 22 minutes approximately. Results, and so the candidates' performance. As you can see, just 55% of the candidates passed the test, and unfortunately 45% of them failed it. More in detail, we can see that 10% of the students, so this means 2 students, were borderline with 8 points. 20% of the students, which here means 4 students, got the minimum, so 9. 35% of the students scored more than 9, and 35% of the students scored 7 or less than 7. This means 7 students out of 20. Again, more in detail, we can see raw scores. So, for example, we had a minimum of 2 points out of 15 and a maximum of 11 points out of 15. None of the test takers scored the maximum, which was 15. However, the range is quite wide, so we might say that somehow this entry test discriminated well between weak and strong test takers. By observing data during the entry test concerning the listening test, I soon realized that probably these test takers needed help, because the listening comprehension, as we know, is quite hard as a skill, because it could be seen as a sort of fleeting moment. It's a matter of decoding an input, and the input is oral, so it's not written. Decoding can only happen during a limited amount of time, and this is true in real life. For example, when we listen to the news, or when, for example, there are announcements concerning public transport. And this is also true during foreign language examinations. So that's why I decided to provide them with resources, and I chose the free online resources. For example, here is a website, ESL Lab, which offers different levels, immediate feedback, and transcript as well. Here is a screenshot from, please notice the old layout, because they have recently changed a little bit their site, but for the scope of this presentation, I felt that the old one was much better in order to show you how it works. There are different levels. And so several columns, for example, easy, medium, and difficult, in this case for general listening quizzes. So test takers and so students can choose the level they think is best for them. And of course, they can, for each single level, they can choose the topics that they find more interesting and so close to their needs. This is a real example with multiple choice questions, and they have the opportunity to listen to the audio file as many times as they want, because this is not a test, this is just meant for practice. But at the same time, they get immediate feedback thanks to a score, which is expressed in numbers, and thanks to the opportunity to see what is right and what is wrong. So it is immediate feedback, but at the same time, it is also corrective feedback, which is very useful when you're learning a foreign language or a second language. And then the magic of transcript, as I call it, because a transcript can be extremely useful when you are studying a new language, because sometimes, as I said, that is the fleeting moment, and sometimes you have to make sense of a continuum of sound. Maybe you might miss a single word or just a phrase, or sometimes there is something new to you. So if you have a chance to listen to the recording again while, for example, reading the text, you somehow raise your own awareness in terms of, for example, new vocabulary, what it means if you look it up in a dictionary, or, for example, in terms of how to pronounce that word, because sometimes we do recognize words in written text, but sometimes we do not recognize words in listening comprehension, especially for a language such as English, which is not transparent. So I thought this was a good tool in order to raise the students' awareness. Another tool used with the students and so for their own autonomous learning was providing them with an online platform called MyELT, which is instructor-led, which is based on the workbook. And in order to access this platform, both a course key and a content access code are required. The positive aspects of this platform are that it is interactive. It provides, once again, immediate feedback. It provides multimedia learning environments, so with pictures, videos, text, written text, oral text, and so on. And since it is online, students can access it whenever and wherever they want, even while traveling, while commuting, traveling by trains or commuting. Here are some examples. This is one of them concerning sentences, and so the task is just choosing if the sentence is right or wrong, so if it is true or false. The topic is about the English language, which could be of interest to teachers teaching history, but also to teachers teaching Latin, because I had one of the students, for example, in one of their oral presentations, so she decided to compare words in Latin and words in English, in modern English, just because some of them come from Latin, and so it is also useful for teaching Latin. Here is another example, multimodality with a picture and also with a different test method, because there are sentences, there are questions, and here students are asked to write the missing parts. This means a sort of integrated task, and so it's not just listening, but also somehow writing and producing something which is not simply recognizing a word, but you have to be active, you have to be productive, you have to write something, and then of course you get your feedback if it is right or wrong. The last example from this platform is this exercise, which is about the topic biomimetics. So somehow a topic which might be referred to science, and so maybe of interest to teachers that teach in science. And in terms of test method to practice, we have the quite traditional multiple choice test method. Then I provided a third and last free online resource, which this time was tailor-made, so no more concerning general English, but this time English for specific purposes. And the task I created for the teachers was, we might say, homemade, because as we know, CLIL teachers have to create raw materials. Here's the example from TED Talks, and I chose this topic about fire, and so about the state of matter, so solid, liquid, or gas. The topic can be extremely useful for people teaching in chemistry. Since this is a TED Talk, there were no tasks meant for learning a foreign language, so I had to create a task for the students. And this is the example I can provide you with. As you can see, I just wrote down sentences, and they had to decide which was the best option, true, false, or doesn't say. Please notice that I asked them just to listen to the audio file, not the video, just because the first time they watched the video, but then the second time when they were asked to fill in this task, I told them, please just focus on the lesson, not on the video, because it might be somehow distracting. Here, I will not tackle the long lesson debate concerning the test method in terms of true, false, doesn't say, or not given, just because, as we know, there are pros and cons. But as you can imagine, this is a task that could be easily created for students because as an item writer, it's not that difficult to create. A positive aspect for this online resource is the fact that it also provides transcript. And this time, this transcript is what I call a sort of transcript in motion. What I mean is it is a sort of text-to-speech. So students, once more, can watch the video again, can listen to the video again, but this time they can focus on the written text on the transcript. And what is useful is the fact that while the speaker speaks, the part of the text which is bold will become highlighted. So somehow you can focus your attention on the part which is pronounced. And so again, you can work more on vocabulary, you can work more on pronunciation, and so you can work more on making sense of the continuum of sound. But I also thought that this tool, and so this opportunity of a text which is highlighted, of a transcript which is in motion, I felt that could be a resource not just for the teachers as students, but also a tool for teachers as prospective and effective CLIL professionals. In particular, for example, with their classes if they have dyslexic students. So somehow it was a way to foster effective CLIL teaching strategies, because as we know, CLIL, after all, is learning through the English language. So prospective teachers can help their own students learn more in terms of English as language and English competence. At the end of the course, the students were asked to, they were given the opportunity to sit a proficiency test on the 4 skills. Here, again, I will focus just on listening. The test was on a voluntary basis, and since they had personal or professional commitments, I was asked for 2 sessions, and so they were allowed a session in May, at the end of May, and another session at the end of June. This meant devising 2 parallel versions of the same test with 2 tasks. The first one with 5 short recordings. This means the opportunity for test takers to enjoy a sort of fresh start of the recording itself. And then the second one was a longer one with 2 or more speakers. Both tasks had 5 items, 10 items, and multiple choice questions were used as test method with 3 or 4 options. In terms of cutoff, 60% was the minimum, this time 12 out of 20. And again, the opportunity to listen to the audio file for 2 times maximum. The time allocated was between 21 and 22 minutes. What was assessed was English as a second language, so not ESP, and the level was C1. Now let's have a look at results, and let's compare results with the entry test. First of all, we can see that I had less test takers, just 17 for the proficiency test. And unfortunately, even the percentage of pass was lower, 35%. So despite the course and despite the fact that they were also provided with with resources for autonomous learning. More in detail, we can see the 17 candidates, and in particular the ones who, for example, improved the score and those whose score was even worse. For example, in the test taker number 1 and number 2, their score was worse. The same may be said for number 12, number 13. But if we observe candidate number 4, we can see, for example, that somehow I can consider her result as an improvement, because even if the minimum was reached in both sessions, but after all, this was a minimum at the end of a course which lasted just 5 months. And so not a long time. So I was quite happy with this result. If we consider, for example, candidate number 5, we can see that she scored during the proficiency test 11, which means borderline. But since the level is higher, it might, although it is a fail, it might be considered as a sort of improvement. I had a great improvement, for example, in candidate number 11, she scored 16, and also candidate 16 scored quite well with 15 out of 20. So I tried to find possible explanations for weak performance. And so maybe one of the reasons is that, for example, the B2 prerequisite might have something wrong with it. For example, certificates sometimes might be too old. As if you remember, some test takers had failed the B2 entry test. And for example, even the certificates, just the certificates of attendance were accepted. So maybe we should not accept a certificate of attendance, but certificates of proficiency. Another reason might be, for example, that maybe the test takers and so the students didn't have enough time for autonomous learning, despite being part of the program. Another reason might be the fact that some students would have loved to make the most of the summer break in order to revise, in order to study, but unfortunately, it was not possible for this course. And the last point, this is just my own speculation, so I might be wrong, is listening and age. Could it be the imperfect match? Because what I mean is that we're talking about listening and comprehension, which is usually hard for anybody in a foreign language. And among the students, I had several of them who were in their 60s. So maybe, you know, they might be somehow, they might be suffering from a little bit of hearing impairment, and so being a little bit hard of hearing. And so somehow this might have affected their performance. But of course, this is my own speculation, I'm not sure about that. So in conclusion, these secondary school teachers who might be regarded as a new generation of learners were offered an opportunity, were offered a chance, which proved to be sometimes a bit challenging. They were also offered the opportunity to practice autonomous learning, which means studying at their own pace and according to their own needs. They were also given the opportunity to exploit and explore different learning modes, such as paper-based versus technology-based. I say technology because they could use smartphones, tablets, computers. And they also had the opportunity to use the learning resources as teachers with their own students, so as teaching resources once back to their classes. And they also have the opportunity to foster lifelong language learning, and last but not least, the opportunity to raise their own awareness in terms of effective listening comprehension. But maybe something should be revised, for example, admission criteria. So as anticipated, maybe some certificates are too old and so they should not be accepted as prerequisite. Maybe we should not, as an institution, accept certificates of attendance, but proficiency, certificates of proficiency. And maybe learners should be provided with more time for their own autonomous learning. After all, these students were adults. They had personal but also professional commitments, so sometimes this makes life much harder. I was also told, for example, that there was a long time spent between the first course that were offered by the ministry and this one, the next one, again offered by the ministry. So maybe we should avoid a long time spent between the two courses, because students tend to forget what they learned. I don't want to say they have to start again from scratch, because it's not that, but they need time to revise, to memorize, and so maybe less time would be beneficial. A last point could be, in order to try to investigate more what was successful, what wasn't that successful, is that maybe I might have tried to administer questionnaires, or for example, I might have tried to conduct interviews with these people. Thank you for your attention. Let me please say thank you to the two committees for organizing all this despite these unprecedented times. And special thanks to the conference team for the great work, for the great job, for the great effort, and special thanks to Dr. Petra Travnikova, apologies for my pronunciation, for being so kind to me during the hardest months of the pandemic here in Italy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your speech. And it's my turn to ask the audience if we have any questions. Please.
I've got a question. Buongiorno. I've got a question. Whether all the students had the same L1, their first language?
I'm not sure I heard you well, but I think you asked me about their L1 language. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yes, they were all Italian.
Okay, right. And my next question was, they started the course because they were teaching CLIL in their own context as secondary school teachers, or because they wanted generally to upgrade their listening comprehension skills?
No, they were there just because they were interested in teaching CLIL classes, but as prospective CLIL teachers, because this course was just meant for improving the language, and the minimum level in our own schools in Italy, in order to be a CLIL teacher, is C1. And they have to hold that level, but they also have to hold a certificate from universities concerning CLIL methodology.
Okay, that's it.
Prego.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do we have any questions in the chat?
No, there are no questions in the chat.
Okay. And any other questions in the audience?
I can ask a question. Can I just ask, what was at stake for those teachers if they failed? Could nerves have played a role in the worse results of their proficiency test?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Can you please repeat?
Sure. What was at stake for those teachers? If they failed that test, would they not be able to continue, or how serious were the consequences?
No, I mean, nothing's serious, because after all, as I said, it was just a voluntary exam. So no stakes, no high stakes, or I mean, if you failed, no problem with your head teacher, or for example with the regional education authorities. It was an opportunity, sometimes unfortunately for some of them quite challenging, but after all it was an opportunity. And some of the people, for example, who decided not to take the test, they were just interested in the certificate of attendance, or just in improving a little bit of English, because after all, for them, it meant an opportunity of a language course, which was for free.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. May I ask also a question? You were talking about the feedback. Do you also use the peer feedback?
I mean, you said feedback among the students, the student teachers, that's what you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I use that during the writing, but also with oral presentations, because as I said, the proficiency test and so the course aimed at providing, let's say, help in all the 4 skills. So they also had to provide oral presentations at first as a sort of practice, and so just in front of the other students, in front of the other teachers. And so they received feedback from their own peers, and also they received feedback when I asked them to write something at home in order to make the most of the time that we had. And so then I tried to ask them, please swap your pieces of writing, just try to catch or just try to spot any possible mistake in terms of, for example, idioms, in terms of language, in terms of grammar, and then report back to the class. As you can imagine, this is quite beneficial, but sometimes it doesn't work with weak students, because of course those who think are, not up to par, sometimes they are too shy to contribute, and they don't want to be there and to say, okay, this is my point of view, this is what I would do. So again, it depends on the teachers, but they have the opportunity to work on peer revision.
Thank you for answer.
You're welcome.
Questions in the chat?
Okay, now we have any questions in the chat.
Is there a specific test what teachers have to take? IELTS, something like
The text that I use, a test or a text?
Test.
A test, right. International certification. So this was just meant as a practice, and this is not the course which gives them, which entitles them to teach in schools as the CLIL professionals. Then they're asked to take and so to pass an international certification.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if there are no questions, I would like to thank you once more.
Thank you.